Hey everyone, thanks for joining on time. Let's give a couple of minutes for everyone else to join, and I'm gonna run a small poll in the meantime. I'd really appreciate if you can participate. Thank you. Okay, so appreciate everyone's participation. So the results are 25% of attendees say that they know how to auto capture data in a secure and reliable way. 25 not really. 39 are not sure, and 11 are not using the Salesforce as their primary CRM. So I appreciate everyone's participation again. Let's roll. My name is Max. I am the CMO at Revenue Grade, and I welcome you to our webinar. A few housekeeping items before we jump in. The session is being recorded, of course, and we will be sharing it via the email within the next couple of days. And please also feel free to use the chat section of the GoToWebinar panel on the right of the screen, and we will cover those questions at the end of the webinar. All right. So now I'm joined by Sviat, Lobach, and Eric Dreshfield. I'll let them introduce themselves. Eric.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Max. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all today. My name's Eric Dreshfield. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2009, a Salesforce MVP since 2013, and now in the MVP Hall of Fame. And my day job is as a product evangelist for Mowgli. Svat, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Sviat Lobach, VP of Product at Revenue Grid. I'm in Salesforce ecosystem since 2014, working with Revenue Grid for over 7 years, building the new cloud story of Revenue Grid. So very happy to hear lots of questions, share the knowledge, and some of the cases how we could do better in data quality. Good. So I think we could just start with the agenda. So Eric.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today, the impact of bad data on organizations, what the real cost is for sales organizations in particular. We're also going to talk through why a lot of data management approaches really don't do a good job managing data quality issues. And then we'll talk through some ideas on how automation can improve the data quality in your CRM. And also finally, what are the best ways to get clean data in your CRM like you've never had before?
Awesome. So let's get started with the first topic. What's the data quality? What's the quality data and why it is important?
Right. So if you think about data quality, the immediate things that always come to mind are, is it accurate? Is it timely? Probably the things that some people don't always think about is, do you have complete data? I mean, if you're missing a phone number, for example, your data quality is not as strong as it could be. So not just having accurate data, but having all the data that you really need. Even though we're in this virtual world where people are sending emails or communicating through Slack or other channels, sometimes it's still great to be able to pick up a phone and call somebody. So if you don't have a phone number, you're not going to be able to do that. So you're going to be lacking something there in data quality. And of course, consistency is the key. You want to make sure all of your contacts have the same level of data. For example, that everybody's got complete data, accurate data, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, maybe even. That could possibly be important for some reasons as well. Sviat, any additional comments you want to toss on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to stress that CRM is just a system of records, right? So it constantly needs to be updated and maintained from data quality standpoint, right? So it's a system that evolves constantly and the data always changes. Our CRM is kind of static, right? So if you don't update records, even if some time ago they were perfectly correct and everything was fine, in a month or in a year, it becomes outdated, right? So you always need to maintain the data, ensure you have connectivity to some of the data sources of communications at first, right? It's about customer relationship management, to gather that data, label it, save properly to right records, understand what records are outdated, know how to maintain them, what tools to use, and only then the CRM itself is alive, because it's like, you need to maintain not just from processes standpoint, not just from, user standpoint, but also from data standpoint. It's really, really important. Siloed data and outdated data is killing our CRM investment.
That is so true. So while we're talking about killing our investment, I think this is the perfect time to launch a poll to see what other people think about the consequences of bad data. And let's see what our audience has to say about that. So you should be seeing a poll on the screen. Just click your selection for what you think is one of the consequences. There's certainly a lot of various options and lots of things that can happen with bad data. We'll give that another minute or so. That's probably a good enough time. Let's see what the results are. What do we have, Max?
Yeah, so here our results is pretty much expected. Yeah, so
all of
83% say
the
all of
above.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And all of those are very, very possible consequences of bad data. And I think even, in fact, these were all real examples that we found while doing some research that were caused by bad data. I mean, and
Absolutely good examples.
It can impact all sorts of things. I mean, these are pretty big and pretty major impact, but there's certainly things where bad data can have consequences that are smaller than these as well. But it's all important to consider all the consequences and then try to figure out what you can do to prevent those things from happening in the future.
Absolutely. And plus, we need to remember that Salesforce evolved from just being a CRM and storing only contacts and accounts, maybe opportunities, to a system that is really connected to many of the important things we use every day, even in healthcare. So this example about transplanting the wrong organ is just really relevant. So it's not just being about updating phone numbers, right? But maintaining the whole graph of links and connections. And it goes way beyond just sales. And that's important. But for sales, that's crucial.
Right. Max, can we go to the next slide? So some of the impacts of bad data highlighted here quickly. Complex data ecosystems, as Sviat just said, data silos, for example, that certainly compounds that issue. Slow digital transformation. If you think about what digital transformation really involves, when you come to the realization that you need to go digital to survive as an organization, that's when your data and its cleanliness really becomes super important. And at that point, when you discover, oh wow, our data is really bad, it's going to slow your progress down significantly. And all of those things combined really can drive the poor decision making. You make decisions based on data that's not accurate. You're going to have inaccurate decisions, and they may throw you down the wrong path and send your organization or your product or whatever it is you're dealing with down into a rabbit hole you didn't really want to go in, and you may struggle to climb back out. And of course, competition. Competition's all around us. Every industry, every product, you name it, there's somebody out there trying to do the same thing you are. And it's like the companies with the biggest advantages, the best data quality, the most automated procedures, all of those kinds of things give you that big competitive advantage that's going to cause you to win. And I guess kind of buried beneath all of these is the loss of data, not just the loss of data, but the loss of dollars. So you're leaking revenue, you're losing sales perhaps because of all these things. Wouldn't you say that's true, Sviat?
Absolutely. To be frank, data is a business problem, right? So like maybe 10 years ago, it was kind of CIO office problem, right? IT problem. But right now, it's pretty clear that the data quality and the data we work with as a company is utterly business problem. Just a couple of examples and statistics from Gartner and Salesforce. So Gartner says poor data quality costs organizations an average of almost 13 million per org. Just think about that. Obviously, Gartner works with kind of corporate and enterprise customers, but still, it's a huge amount. And according to Salesforce, an average business loses 30% of its annual revenue due to poor data quality. So pretty obvious, it goes to revenue leaks. And we do all know that revenue leaks come from the very beginning, and the data is a foundation of how you build your business, right? You build a business on CRM. Once again, it's a business problem. Let's move on and think on why do most data management approaches never work?
Yeah, that's a big question for sure. And we've got a few things kind of highlighted on the screen here that are signs of bad data management. And if you look at these and you think about them for a minute, it's really probably all around procedures and processes and improper use of existing systems, perhaps, or maybe even utilizing the wrong system that's causing all of these issues. Centralized, control-oriented, somebody owns the data, and they're not necessarily willing to give up that ownership, but by realizing you need to be gracious and share your data to be able to use it properly throughout your entire organization, that helps avoid some of the other consequences and signs you see on the screen here. But that bottom one I think is pretty key. A lot of people don't realize they play a role in data management, and just getting individuals to realize my job's important. What I do in the CRM, where I start and put in data, that all begins and helps guide the problem or solve the problem, I suppose, is maybe a better way to look at it that way from the positive approach. But getting people to understand how much impact their specific role has on data management is going to be a big impact on preventing it, I think, as well.
Right, but just think about the ideal scenario when you do nothing and you have the most recent and updated data in your CRM, and people just continue their job working in their environment, maybe in CRM as well, but in Outlook, in the field, calling customers, doing their regular cadence without thinking that they need to update something. That's an ideal world, but indeed, you do need to understand that in case you need to input something, that's really a key, not just for you, but the organization as well. And just an example from maybe not really sales world, but think about Uber. And Uber internally had more than 10,000 databases, not particularly connected, somehow connected, and eventually they were all impacting their business. So if we have just Salesforce and it has the data, that's cool because it's a single system that holds the most crucial data points. And even in Uber, a huge org and famous org, they didn't manage to do that. And that means it's a huge challenge.
Definitely. There was another recent article that Gartner published not too long ago talking about data governance and the kind of the one size fits all model and how that's not really good enough anymore. Kind of talked about where we came from today with that one size fits all model, starting from the inside and going out, where things are kind of control oriented with formal decision points. And it was more compliance oriented and more passive, moving into more of what we really need today to make all of this work more efficiently and better, where it's more all around multiple styles and being very sensitive to context, where it's flexible and dynamic and can change as the enterprise changes and as the ecosystem you're working in changes. And of course, not being centralized, being distributed with formal decision rights connected to the value associated with the data that you have.
Eric, that's a great catch. Basically, let's think about some security concerns and shifts we saw during last 5 years, like GDPR compliance or the same kind of similar thing in California, right? So you literally need to own and understand what data is being stored, be able to navigate through the data, be able to report on that data, and be responsible for it. So, and maybe you heard lots of sues to huge companies because of being GDPR not being GDPR compliant. It could be maybe not a huge problem for mid-size org, but still, it's a law, right? And you need to obey it. So having the data accurate and be able to report on this data is really, really important. And in case of GDPR, it's pretty simple, right? Your customer wants to understand what data is being stored related to his personal records. Pretty simple question, but if you have 10,000 databases, it's hard to answer. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So where's a good starting point on how to fix this, right? Some people may think manual data entry is a starting point, but anytime you do anything manual, you're automatically introducing human error. And if the data is already existing in some other system and you're trying to centralize that into one true system of record, perhaps where we need to go with this is automation and automate the processes and the procedures and everything to get all the data talking to each other properly so that we all know what's going on.
Absolutely. And the last thing, Eric, on the previous slide, you just mentioned that we need to have this culture and responsibility for employees being owners of the data. But if it's purely manual, eventually it won't work, right? We put all of the burden of entering the data manually on the sales reps or employees, and eventually they hate it and it doesn't work. So it might work for some period of time, not really reliable way. So
Right.
obviously should be an automation and help.
Yep. So thinking about the future a little bit more, McKinsey, you see the quote on the screen from McKinsey that says, by 2025, AI will enable a more effective data management by automating the identification, correction, and remediation of data quality issues. You know, that's great, right? I mean, automate it, make it smart enough so that it fixes issues as it detects them, rather than them being perpetuated through additional human error. That's really the key, I think, to success in this area.
And 2025 is like
It's tomorrow.
3 years.
It's faster
Yeah,
than it's going to be here long before we think it should be. That is for
yes,
sure.
yes. Okay, so like automating activity capture, is it the way to go, Eric?
Well, you know, yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, that's where a lot of the benefits going to come in from is automating the activity capture. Some of the things, some of the solutions, or some of the features, I guess, that automated activity capture solutions offer. Obviously, the most important one, I think, is reduced mistakes, of up-to-date and complete data. With it being automated, anytime something changes, everybody's going to know about it. Let's go on to the next slide where I've got these kind of highlighted anyway.
Yeah, just wanted to mention that by 2025, according to Gartner, once again tomorrow, 70% of B2B seller buyer interactions will be recorded for competitive analysis, deal analysis, and market analysis. So we're like talking about things that are going to happen tomorrow.
Right. And the best time to get ready for tomorrow is today, right? It's time to make changes.
Maybe today afternoon.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, the things we've just talked about: up-to-date, complete data, fewer mistakes, more productivity, better security. Let's touch on that one for a minute. You know, some of us may feel like security is a pretty strong thing going right now, but you see stories in the news about breaches all the time. So what's that mean, right? We need to keep improving the methods we have for security and things that we can do to prevent those data breaches from happening. And then ultimately, you know, by automating a lot of this, it frees up time from your sales teams for them to actually be out there talking to customers, closing deals, and improving the progress of the sales cycle and speeding things up.
Eric, that's great that you mentioned security here, because it's also a risk, right? So in case you capture some private data or attribute data incorrectly, it's a huge security risk, right? Because it's automated, and if something goes wrong, it's a huge red flag for security, right?
Right.
But we'll talk
Absolutely.
about this later, how we could eliminate this risk effectively.
So, Sviat, I have a question for you then. Why is it that not all activity capture solutions are the same? What are the things people ought to be looking for in the ideal solution?
Basically, let's see. So what are the main issues? So no reportable data. Basically, some of the out-of-the-box solutions, they only capture the data according to specific structure and provide out-of-the-box reports that you cannot customize and change. Eventually, it goes to garbage, since you really cannot understand what is going on with the business, how it's being divided by sales rep focus. For example, you need to understand whether sales reps are focusing on closing new business or maintaining relationships with the existing one, kind of farming or hunting for new customers. Plus, sync that is not flexible. And once again, it should be according to your sales process, according to your rules in your organization. Basically, that's why we are talking about kind of adopting this in 2025, not today, but tomorrow. We should be ready, but we are not yet there because of the challenges with many of the activity capture solutions. Limited accessibility to data. Basically, when you save and you start capturing data automatically, it comes to the fact that you have a ton of data, lots of data. And that's why many solutions start cutting the kind of the edge and only showing the data limited to 6 months or maybe a year, but it's not okay when you're building a data-driven organization. Plus, they do not capture historical data and only capture new activities that are happening. And you really need to understand what's been happening, like even some years ago, in order to build a proper strategy, build right reports, and make right business decisions. And once again, security concerns, we mentioned about this. If the data is saved incorrectly, if you capture private events, if you attribute sales activity to wrong contacts or wrong accounts, wrong opportunities, eventually it could come up with the security breaches and even huge risks for you as an organization.
Yep. So thinking about everything that we've just talked about in the last 25 minutes or so, it seems like there's really 5 main things that you can do to avoid having bad data in your CRM. Let's go to the next slide. I hope you just got there. Awesome. So make sure you use the right data collection methods and you're collecting the right data, of course. Tailor your data quality management to your specific organization needs. Obviously, that means you need to have a flexible system that allows you to do this tailoring. Create a data quality framework. And I guess by that, we probably mean what does good look like for you and for your organization? What pieces of data are important? What does it mean to say I have clear-cut quality data? Are you collecting all the right pieces? Do you have it timely? All those things we touched on earlier. Point number 4, involve your stakeholders. I think that's huge. They're going to be the ones utilizing the data. They're going to be the ones seeing the results of what the data is showing. They'll be doing reports. They'll be making decisions. All those things that impact their jobs daily is a clear-cut result of what happens when you have good data or bad data. And then, of course, we talked about early on, it's more of a culture shift, and you need to think about data quality management as part of your organization's culture, not just a one-off project, because it is, as you pointed out earlier, it's ongoing. It's a constant struggle, a constant challenge, and it needs to be addressed all the time.
Thank you, Eric. I will add more kind of points from my side to each of the items here. So, like, how not to collect data? Just think about this. When we speak about interactions and sales activities, it's kind of loosely structured formats typically. It's a phone call, right? It's an email. It's a message in Slack or Microsoft Teams. So we need really to think how we could understand what this message is about and what are the attributes, what is the sentiment, and how we store this data in CRM, which is actually, an SQL database, right? So how do we combine loosely structured format of actual message into the structured format you have in CRM? So this lack of structure in gathering information typically results in costly rework or critical decisions made on incomplete information, and you don't want that, right? Also, you need to use validation rules. just to verify the data that is entered by a user or logged automatically meets the standards you specify before a user could save or tool could save the record. And if your tool that you're choosing could provide this level of flexibility, that's awesome. You could literally understand that those activities are saved to the right records with the right structure and so on. Plus, sometimes it shouldn't be like a strict rule, right? You could attribute the activity to a specific set of customers or set of contacts and suggest the user to select not from the whole list, but just from the ones that were selected by a tool. In case it's really complicated dialogue happening over the phone or in email. Eric, could you add something to that?
Yeah, I think that's really good points that you just brought up, especially around the ability to tailor it to make sure that it works specifically for your organization's needs. And that's really important because not all businesses and organizations operate the same way. So structuring their data and their framework and everything they do to make sure the quality of what they've got works for them, that's super important.
Yes, so you said that work for them, and it means that in your CRM, you create your custom workflow, right? And this custom workflow could be supported by many custom fields, custom objects, and you need to ensure the structure that is saved and linked should be there while capturing the right activity.
Right, exactly. Maintain the data integrity as you're capturing your data. Yep.
And
I think
eventually, yeah, go ahead.
I think we have one more poll that we wanted to pose to our audience too, didn't we?
Yeah, well, that's the poll in the very end of the webinar. So I guess we should run it right now. Okay, so I guess but that's that. Do we have if we have a couple of questions at the audience? All right, so I'll launch a poll, and in the meantime, I'll be asking those questions. Just give me a second. Okay. Apologies. So the questions are: Is there a way to measure data quality? Actually, which is an interesting one. Is there one?
That's a good question.
Yeah, Eric,
isn't it?
That's a really good question.
I have a couple of examples from the top of my head, but okay, I could start. So basically, indeed, you could easily, in some cases, measure the data quality. Think about validating how much of your contacts in your CRM don't have valid email. Quite easy, right?
Right.
One more example. Think about how many contacts that your sales reps did communicate with through email or over the phone and saved into their personal mobile phone are never saved in CRM.
Oh, see, that's an interesting one. I wouldn't have even thought about that one myself. And that's probably something a lot of us do as we're just having our daily conversations. We just store it right to our phone and don't even really think about it that, oh, wait, this needs to be in CRM.
And Revenue Grid could provide like a magic solution that will show how much of those contacts you actually communicated with are not saved to CRM. So you could literally see the data quality percentage evaluated against your CRM. So it's an awesome question. And it's pretty obvious, right? We could dive deeper and think on how we could link activity to right contacts and right opportunities and drive actions based on those activities. Let's say you have opportunity that was created a year ago and is basically dead, but you don't know about that because it didn't capture the activity, didn't link this activity to this opportunity, and it's a bad data quality. You have some opportunity that is there in your CRM, but it's actually a walking dead opportunity. And you could easily eliminate those opportunities using right data capturing method with the actionability that will show that those exact opportunities must be put out of your forecast because nothing is happening there.
Yeah, that's great. We actually have somebody in the audience who responded to that question, which I really appreciate. So Mark says, for measuring the data quality, one thing we do is measure the percent of accounts in CRM that are high quality records defined as those containing website, phone, and a full address, which is a good hint.
Yep.
Okay, we have another question. I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
I was just going to agree with that last statement, and it sounds like that particular organization really understands where their data is and what they're doing with it already, so they're in a good place.
Mm-hmm. And I'll come up with the last example just because it's so relevant to things that we are doing every day. Okay, think about the data quality as understanding that your decision makers assigned to opportunities are still working with this company, or the same applies to accounts. Do you want to see how many of those contacts are not actually working for those accounts? And the same goes for opportunities. You're thinking that decision maker could help? No, they left the company.
Yep.
And that's a data quality problem that could be easily solved.
Yep. Sviat, can you also please change to the next slide? And we actually have a couple of other questions to be frank. So the other question is, who should be responsible for data quality and within the organization, which is also not pretty an easy one to crack, right? So who would be that person?
I think the easy answer is everyone, but that almost sounds too generic, doesn't it, and too simple. I think in a lot of organizations there really needs to be one specific person whose sole focus is data quality, and their responsibility should be helping to make sure that everyone else is following the proper procedures and pathways to make sure that whatever data they are dealing with coming into the system is quality data to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, it's tightly related, and Eric, you mentioned that it's tightly related to the processes and workflows you implement in the company, right? So when speaking about sales world, it's mostly comes to sales enablement and sales revenue operations as ones who are responsible for having the right workflow, maintaining that, ensuring your sales reps are sticking to this workflow every day and maintaining those best practices, including data quality, plus selecting the right tools in order to maintain this data quality. So the broad answer is everyone, but kind of more specific answer is the role of sales enablement and revenue sales operations. In case you do have this dedicated specialist, or it could be just a role like Salesforce admin could do those duties.
Yeah, I was about to add it. I guess it really depends on the size of the company and the maturity of the company. So at different sizes and different levels of maturity, you'll have probably different people. Hopefully, you know, there are companies mature enough who have a dedicated team or a person who would be responsible for that. Talking about the data quality, we have another question. Adam's asking, also data capture is one example of how to increase data quality. Can you name some others?
You know, I think it ties in right in with data capture, and I think that's deduplication efforts, because you can be bringing in data from multiple places, but if you're not validating that it's a unique record within your system, you're not really doing yourself a favor by having duplicated data. And duplicated data doesn't necessarily mean every single field on a record is identical to another record. It may mean the email address is the same, or the name is the same, or the phone number is the same, but some of the other pieces of data associated with that may be different. So you need to figure out and do some analysis on all that to determine which one of these is most accurate, and then try to eliminate the duplications as you can.
Moreover, Eric, that's exactly right. Moreover, there could be a situation, we saw that within our customer base, that there are multiple email fields associated with the contact, and sometimes the overlap happens even in a different field of email type, right? So it could be secondary email for the contact A and a primary email for the contact B, and actually it means this is the same contact, and you need to capture data properly and deduplicate it. And just adding to on top, basically it's not about capturing the data from communication sources, it's also about maintaining the data quality from validating emails and phone number standpoint. So if you have right phone numbers and emails in your CRM, that's also a good catch.
Exactly.
Yep. I would like to add to that. I think that the other way of keeping the data quality high at the CRM is whoever's responsible for data quality should always ask what data is actually needed to make up the decision. Because sometimes we end up having too much of the data, and it stacks up to the level where it's hard to really to see what is the value of the data. So I would say, especially as a marketing leader, we put so much stuff in the CRM. Sometimes it's worth really to stop and understand, like, what do I really need to make an important strategic business decisions. Actually, another question, which is quite long, but we actually see it a lot in our customer base. But let's say the marketing team, that's Eric. Let's say the marketing team wants better data quality, but they don't have admin rights to install an app. So it's stuck in a backlog for the admins to install the app for the marketing team. Based on your experience, how do you politically convince the Salesforce admin to prioritize a data quality management app over the existing backlog of integrations and other stuff? Which is a great question.
That is a really awesome question. My initial reaction would be to say that I hope the admin realizes data quality is very important, and that it needs to take more priority. But obviously in this example, that particular person may not feel that way, or they may just have too many other things already in the top priority, and that need to be done to better the organization as a whole. So, I think it all really centers around stressing the importance of data quality, probably more from the standpoint of the impact of bad data quality rather than the benefits of good data quality. It seems like a lot of people respond quicker, perhaps, or see the value in something when the negative aspect to something is pointed out. So maybe that's one approach to try to take in that regard, is look at all the issues that the bad data we have already is causing, and talk about how many hours of manpower might be saved if the data quality was better, and if this particular thing was addressed earlier. It might free up a lot of people and a lot more time for them to do other things and move the company forward even faster.
And like you were asking about installing some app directly to Salesforce. There is some different way of doing that. So Revenue Grid could connect to Salesforce through API only, so there is no need actually to install anything. And in case you have access to Salesforce, you could easily connect your account through Revenue Grid to Salesforce. And Revenue Grid will provide you with the reports on the data quality. how many contacts are actually dead and you do not communicate with them at all. Plus, you could build reports saying how many of those don't have mobile phone numbers or emails, non-valid emails, left their jobs, and so on. And when you go to your admin and tell them, okay, like more than half of our data in CRM could be deleted, that's a thing to consider, right? So, and this admin could even lose their job, right? In case actually it appears that you do not need a CRM because like more than half of the data in CRM is garbage. And for you as a marketing leader, when you need to send an email blast or provide a campaign to contacts that are dead, that's definitely impacting ROI of this campaign and overall business.
Yeah, I would say that the way I would perceive it, right? I know I'm a marketer, and there are some apps and other stuff that I ask our admin to do or to install. The way I would do it is I would try and measure, as Sviat said, what is the economic impact, what is revenue impact of this change, why this is important, comparing to some other apps, and hopefully that will align with the overall company strategy. But yeah, I mean, if you have the multiple stuff, at the same time, I guess the only way is to prioritize, and the way to prioritize is depending on how much revenue you're gonna win or lose, based on a certain app or a feature. So Ryan has a question. It seems like the core of data quality issues in the CRM is not keeping people's employment information up to date when they change jobs. It doesn't matter if you have an email address for someone if you've got them at the wrong company. Given the frequency with which people change jobs, do you have any tips or tools for keeping the core data point up to date at scale in an automated way without replying to an individual team members to periodically check the update? So basically, is there a way to automatically change the email address within the CRM of somebody if they change the job?
The short answer is yes. So obviously you could do that. And I'll refer to the thing that I mentioned at the very beginning. So in case you don't maintain data in your CRM, either manually, which is kind of no-go, or automatically, you could see that you don't have CRM at all. You should throw this out. So the short answer is yes, and we can help with that.
Okay, I appreciate the question, Ryan.
Just one more thing, like it's not only about tracking who changed the job. Not just that, because as we talked through, many different data points should be there in CRM in order to maintain it.
Right, absolutely true.
Okay, I guess that there's time for one last question. All the other questions we'll be able to reply via the email because we have a lot of them. So the last question, I'm sorry, my headset just had on mute. So the last question will be, what is the best method to capture historical data without reaching data capacity full of historical data? Matthew's asking. So again, the question is, the best method to capture historical data without reaching the data capacity full of historical data?
I could get this. So like in Salesforce, you definitely have some restrictions on storing the data, right? And it's pretty reasonable, right? You need to pay in case you store many contacts, many tasks, emails, and events in your CRM. And that's why, referring to Max, you need to understand why do you need this data? What business decisions will be done based on this data? Plus, once you understand that, you could easily store only aggregated insights based on this historical data. Let's say how many emails, inbound or outbound, did we have with this contact? If those emails were sent like 10 years ago, there's no much sense to store those emails in Salesforce. And you will understand, okay, the first email was sent 10 years ago, and last email was sent 5 years ago. In total, it was 10 emails. Or you could store those emails in a separate system and only see the widget inside Salesforce that displays those historical communications against this contact account or opportunity. And basically, Revenue Grid could do that, and you will save money on storing the data directly in Salesforce. So we have kind of a way either to index the activity or directly store this in Salesforce. So yes, the challenge is there, and we could help.
Yeah, so it's not always about actually having the data itself. It's sometimes more about, whether the data exchange has been taking place. So it's not always about what was in the email, but how many emails were sent. And hopefully you don't need to have to store all of that emails and all of that calendars and the contacts from the previous times. But you can also be really selective. You can, let's say, only parse all of the people, like contacts and their emails, but not parse and store all of the actual emails. So it really depends on what you want to do. But I would say that just grabbing everything from previous 5 years is not ideal. Guys, so many questions. We will respond to the rest of them. We are almost on top of our hour. So Eric, Sviat, I really appreciate you joining our webinar. It was so useful. And yeah, guys, remember that if you have any other questions that are related to anything to do with data capture, to revenuegrid.com, you can trial the product and talk to us via the chat, etc. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.